let's start with Welch's rise to fame.
Yeah.
She said something, okay, kind of funny, kind of stupid, kind of vulgar in a Streeter interview. It lit up on social media. I will never understand how. She somehow turned that into a massive podcast that ranked in the top 5 overall on Spotify at one point with more than 200,000 subscribers. You and I would kill for our podcast clients to be able to do that for them.
100%.
What does this say about our current, I guess, societal values and the mechanisms that propel people to fame?
Not a whole lot, at least on the positive side of things. That was the first thing I thought about when I know I had said to you too, and there's that thought of, is she a plant? Like, was this done for a reason? This is how her career was going to get started. But like you had told me, like, how you can't predict virility like that. So I think it's more of an indictment on the things that we like to consume. Now, of course, we're using the internet, we're using social media to consume a lot of good things and to communicate with others and to share good content. But we all are susceptible to those rabbit holes to where we get sucked into the nonsense. And I think this was just another one of those things, and enough people got sucked into it that they either were sharing it, so, hey, look at how ridiculous this is, or, oh my God, I think this is funny and you will too, and it just blew up from there. Craziness. So yeah, in regards to our society consuming content like that, I don't know. We might need to check ourselves on that.
I guess we're societal creatures. We're in some ways we are lemmings. We kind of follow one another. If everybody's talking about that thing, all right, maybe I'll watch that on Netflix. And
right.
But you and I, as podcast producers and marketing professionals, we try to capitalize on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're encouraging people to talk about this, share this with we're always trying to get some form of virility. She had the benefit of having Logan Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Be the executive producer. Logan Paul, with all that money that he made from boxing, Mike Tyson.
That was Jake Paul. Jake Paul.
Oh yeah, right. Logan's the brother,
right?
The incredibly rude brother. Okay, well the Paul family, right?
Yeah. Paul got a nice contract from WWE.
Does it come down to money? Is that what this is? Does money make you go viral? Does money give you a hit podcast that people say they like? Does it come down to cash?
Well, I think that doesn't hurt anything. If you've got the money to put that type of thing out there, I mean, if you could invest thousands, even millions of dollars into an ad campaign, of course that's going to get more eyes on what you're doing. But there's been a lot of people that have grown without that type of financial backing. So there's an argument to be made for both sides. This was one of those things that when she did start to take off, it was different in nature, but almost the same. Do you remember the Cash Me Outside girl from several years back?
Oh, yeah.
Who went viral from her appearance on Dr. Phil. I looked at her, I remember, I said, this is going to go on for maybe 15 minutes, and then we'll see her in porn someday.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where she ended up. I want to say, I think I heard in passing that she started an OnlyFans page or an OnlyFans site, which, fine.
Okay.
You do you. I am not crapping on what anybody does to make a living in this world. But I felt like Haliey was going to be following a similar path. What I liked about what she was doing was that she, in capturing that early virility and that early popularity, she was actually trying to do some good with the money that was coming from the appearances that she was making. I know she was giving money back to animal shelters. I thought that was a breath of fresh air, because a lot of people will just take that money and they'll hoard it and they'll just say, oh my God, look at what's happening to me. But she was actually trying to give back, which I think put a positive spin on things. But when you flip it over to the podcast, you and I both know it's all about the content. And you could put millions of dollars behind a crappy podcast, and if the content's not good and it's crappy, that's what people are going to think. So if they hear it, they're going to go, I don't want to listen to this. And I think that's why we saw her dive from, she said she hit number 5 on the list, and she plummeted in a couple weeks' time into the 80s. And I think it was, once you heard it, it was, oof, okay. She did manage to attract some A-list guests. She did. I think her biggest was it Mark Cuban? I think I saw Mark Cuban on her show, which blows my mind. He's a fellow Pittsburgher. But no, just in general, like that's crazy. But I think it was I believe because she got on that, is it Wondery? I'm blanking on what network she joined or what part the Pauls were. Whatever their network is, they're able to attract just because you put a person or a personality on that platform. It's got its built-in audience. So I'm sure that was an attractive thing. Or they just owed Mark Cuban a favor or vice versa, and he said, yeah, all right, I'll come on your show.
Bill Maher was on the show too, right? Which I actually lost a little respect for him because I like Bill Maher. And
yeah, right. No,
he sunk for me because of that. But
yeah, or was she on his show? Or was it the other one?
No, I think he was on hers.
On hers?
The big Talk Tuah banner is in the background.
Oh, okay.
It's the other thing is they did a video podcast, which is, all the discussion
That's
right
where
now.
her famous, Wet Dream Tomato for the Jay-Z song line came from, which was another piece of just silly viral content that was actually funnier than the one that made her famous, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion.
And I agree. I don't want to just crap all over Haliey Welch, the person, because
No, not at all.
I'd also read some articles that her mental approach to things might be unsettled right now, and I want her to feel a bit of shame but not a lot of shame, kind of thing.
Well, I know we're gonna. Yeah. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I know with the whole crypto thing, she should have ran as fast as she possibly could from anybody that brought that
let's
up.
go into that.
Right.
So, okay, she got a chance to have some fame and fortune that went with it. Then the crypto thing, boy, and it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Whether or not the majority of us understand launching a cryptocurrency, doing, I guess, like an IPO where a certain number of people hold the vast majority of shares, propping it up, and then dumping it back on the market, and how, boy, that sounds a lot like theft to the layperson like me. What was she thinking there? Overreaching?
I think so. I think the wrong people got in her ears and just sold her a bill of goods because, we look at viral growth in a certain way, and we often say, okay, how are you going to follow that up? And she was in the process of building an audience through her podcast, and whether that was going to be something that would improve over time, because we know as podcasters continue to put in the reps, they get better at what they do, and just naturally it becomes more of an art form to them. She was still in the early stages of that.
She had a country charm, though.
She does, and that's I'm sure in that, in the Nashville area or Knoxville. I know she's from Tennessee. In that world, she's probably a media darling.
Apple pie, yeah.
Yeah, everybody's diving into what she has to say. But I think perhaps listening to the wrong people, and I don't know who the people were that said this is a good idea, you should run with it. It hit the fast forward button to a point where she didn't understand it, but felt like, okay, I've got the fame and I can make a quick buck here. Let's run with this. Not fully knowing what goes into it. And I'm no expert on crypto at all, so I can't speak to that with intelligence. I just know what I see. The people that jumped in on that, tighten those screws, because that you got one loose.
So let's dissect it a bit further. The transformation of internet memes into personal brands. That's exactly what we saw with Welch.
Yeah.
How is that affecting the traditional understanding of celebrity and influence? And I can't help but think of the most recent U.S. election, where I'm not saying it went anti-celebrity, but certainly there's an undertone of, hey, celebrity, I don't care what you think. Not those celebrities, anyway.
Yeah, that was a big thing this year that I had never seen. And I'm sure it's always been to some degree part of it, but I think just with all of the different platforms that we have at our disposal, this all gets amplified. But I know there's a very popular comedian that I follow named Nicole Arbor, who pointed out, I was offered X amount of dollars to show my support for Kamala Harris, but that's not who I want to support. So she declined the offer. And I have to believe there were a lot of celebrities that did the same. But maybe the biggest, Taylor Swift, threw all of her allegiance behind Kamala Harris, and it still wasn't enough. So I think a lot of people were looking at that saying, okay, celebrities may feel one thing, but I've got my own beliefs, and I've got two sets of eyes, or two eyes. I can see what's happening in front of me. And if I feel a certain way, I can't be influenced by this comedian or this celebrity or this musician. I have to go with my gut.
But now we have Elon Musk, who's a celebrity, right? The Trumps themselves have a degree of celebrity, and they're certainly trying to pump that card, right?
Sure.
So we still are attracted to celebrity, but we seem to be changing the kind of celebrity that we want to follow.
Yeah, well, and I think even with the rise of social media came a change of how we look at celebrities in general. There's a lot of, I mean, you don't have to go through the traditional channels of reaching fame because you have a device in your pocket that allows you to film to the world, and that's going to give you an outlet to where if the right people see you, you have an opportunity to catch fire. And a lot of people have grown specifically through that network and through those means. So we're looking at celebrities completely different. Like Robert De Niro, I know, is a very outspoken celebrity, at least from the old school thought process of celebrities. But now you got all these people that are, I'm sure your social media feed was exactly the same throughout the election leading up to it. That's all you saw. And it was everybody. Like, everybody became a political pundit. I'm like, this isn't changing my thought process at all, because I'm just wondering who recruited you. Was it Fox News? Was it CNN? Was it because you're not qualified for this?
Do you walk with me every day? Because Robert De Niro does not.
No, exactly.
Neither does George Clooney. Neither does Julia Roberts. They don't walk my walk.
Yeah.
Okay, so Haliey Welch became an influencer, and you and I think we agree. It's kind of a shame she did, but okay, she became an influencer.
Yeah.
Is there influencer responsibility? You mentioned the comedian who was offered she had a chance to cash on supporting Kamala Harris, but followed the heart and didn't do that. Where does influencer responsibility come in here?
I think it comes down to not breaking your own morals. And if you are going to go against what you truly believe just for the quick payday, that's probably going to catch up to you eventually. And it's going to hurt that influencer status that you've built, because eventually people can see through you if you're lying, if you're not being truthful, if you're not being authentic. People eventually are going to be able to say, wait a minute, I'm catching you in your own web of lies because you used to say this and now you're over here saying this. And that's only exacerbated because we now have all of these networks on which we can find a person. That one of the big things I said, I think it was 2016, I said, running for president right now has to be next to impossible just because of the 24-hour news cycle on top of the social media cycles.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I'm just thinking Kamala Harris really put herself on the line there as well. No, and I'm not trying to defend, but
no, sure, yeah, she was up against it from the start. I mean, it was she was working from a deficit
time frame.
Yeah, it is an impossible situation.
Yeah. Okay, and then so what do you think about the sustainability of meme-based fame? Someone with a catchphrase or a clever meme, something that catches our eye. I think of it as newspaper catching on fire. And sure, I might light a newspaper on fire in my fireplace, but boy, I better have some big dry logs and some twigs in there to sustain the fire. Are we changing, though? Is meme-based fame something that can be sustained? Because you do get that early jump.
I think it can be if you do it the right way, and then you continue to follow up on it. You know, you take a wicked right turn and just go from spitting on an organ to I've got a podcast to here's my meme coin in about a 2 or 3 month span. That's a lot, and that can really, like I said before, it's like fast forwarding the whole jump to fame and fortune process. I think it can work, and you have to look at the grand scheme of the world we live in, and we say, like, everybody gets their 15 minutes, right? I think you could say that 15 minutes maybe has become 20 now because we have so much more to connect with others and so many more ways of connecting with others. But in the grand scheme of things, it's all about what you're putting in front of people. Is it true to you? Is it true to the message that you want to bring to the world? And the thing that I think about a lot is legacy and looking back. And down the road, years and years from now, would Haliey Welch look back on what she's done and say, I'm proud of this. I'm proud of what I've left behind as I float away from this mortal coil. And that's the thing. I don't know. I can't answer that question for her. I would have to.
Only she can.
Yeah, right. And only you can for yourself and me for myself. We can only look at what we're doing and what we're producing. And that's why I'm a believer in creating content that is true to you and true to your message, because it does create a legacy. And with the internet being written in ink, when you look back on things down the road at the end of your life, are you proud of what you've left behind for the rest of the world to consume?
Do you ever try to decipher what makes something codified, what makes something go viral?
No.
Because I know the answer. I've worked in corporations where the boss, not in comms or marketing, says, make this go viral.
Yeah, that's the problem.
You can't.
You can't.
Like, there is no... But I'm impossibly drawn to trying to figure it out, to try to codify human behavior.
Yeah.
Do you ever go through that? And how do you make something, if not viral, how do you make it splash larger?
There are times where I'll go down that own rabbit hole. It's typically when I'm on a drive or something and I'm just lost in thought. But I don't try to spend a lot of time on that, because it's a fool's errand, really. When you're trying to, like, I'm going to produce this content to go viral, you can't do that, because you can't accurately assume and judge what other people are going to say about that content, and then more importantly, take action with that content, whether it's sharing, liking, retweeting, adding their own thoughts to it. We're seeing a lot more, and this is, I don't know if this is just because I've opened my eyes up to it more, and now that I'm staring at it longer, the algorithm's feeding me more of it, but there are so many people that are building their own content just by sharing the other videos. Like, it's like they're looking at something, and then it comes back to them, they look over here. And then it comes back to them, and they look over here. And it's just jumping from video to video, and they're just making a compilation of different things that are all related. They're getting thousands and thousands of likes from things like that.
Yeah.
And
it's like jujitsu. They're using other people's energy.
Exactly right. And that, to me, I just look at, like, I could do that if I wanted to, but I see no value in that. And I would have no fun with that. I'd rather try to be more creative and more original. And if it catches fire and goes viral, great. I remember I can go back in time to one of my blogs back in the day. I did a craft beer blog, and I wrote an article about 9 craft beer destinations in Pittsburgh. And you got to realize this was before craft beer was really this thing. I mean, it was a thing, but it just hadn't really caught up into the popularity that we see today with all of these breweries and pretty much on every corner. But I wrote that, posted it, didn't really think anything of it, and all of a sudden it was just exploding. People were resharing that and sending me messages and commenting, and, oh, you should talk about this place. And that, of course, led to a follow-up article that went viral. And I remember that was my first viral experience, and the second I looked at those numbers, I went, damn it, what am I going to do next? Because most people are like, oh my God, I'm finally viral. I'm sitting there like, okay, I got to follow this up.
Yeah.
Because now there are eyes here.
You got to find your talk Tuah. Yeah. Where's your talk Tuah?
I know. I needed Haliey Welch's experience years ago. She was probably only like 2 or 3 when this happened. So
that's awesome.
But that was, to me, it was, what do I do next? What do I do to not keep going viral, but now that I've got some attention, what can I do to at least keep some of that audience captivated and keep their butt in the seat so they can continue to learn from me and hear my message?
You got a podcast. Let's blow this up.
I love the excitement in which you talk about the show, Doug.
Well, the inflection, yeah. Well, then it's a beautiful name. Haliey Welch, she blew it up good, got famous, and then blew it up.
Yeah.
Blew it up bad.
Yeah.
What do you do on your podcast, and what is Let's Blow This Up?
So Let's Blow This Up has sort of been on a little bit of a roller coaster in regards to how the show was produced, because the name was a natural fit with Bomb Track Media. When I came up with Bomb Track Media, it was like 3 minutes later, I said, oh, my podcast should be called Let's Blow This Up.
Yeah.
And I felt it all tied together perfectly. But the idea when I did the first season of Let's Blow This Up was not so much to talk about podcasting. It was more to talk about brand growth. And I had assembled some guests that had different outlooks and different perspectives on how to grow their business, and I wanted to capture all that. And I did 7 interviews, and then I did 1 solo episode and just called that season 1. And when I did season 2, I made the decision to go live stream. And I wanted to do interviews, I was going to try to stick to that same theme, but what I was discovering is the show got rolling in live stream format. The people that were reaching out to me to be a part of it all were in podcasting. So there was always going to be an element of podcasting in the conversation. So I said, well, wait a minute. I'm in podcasting too. Everybody that's joining me, that's their expertise. We all can talk about building our brands from the podcast platform. Why don't we lean into that? So the remainder of season 2 became that, and now as I'm preparing for season 3 to go live February of 2025, it's going to, no pun intended, blow up in regards to the podcast talk. I've got 3 different formats. It's going to be 3 episodes a week, the live stream, a solo episode, and then I've assembled what I'm calling a co-host collective, and it's going to be a group of us that are going to dig into some maybe controversial topics, but the goal is kind of like what Haliey Welch is doing, and like everybody else, we're trying to find things that are going to grab people's attention.
Yeah.
Topics within podcasting that not others might be talking about, but we want to really crank the volume up to 12 and really go to town with it. So I encourage everybody, check out what's there. Season 1 and 2 are active now, and season 3 will be in your face in a few weeks from now as we sit and talk.
And at some point I get to be a guest on this.
Doug is going to be a part of season 3. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Really appreciate your time today, Jason.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.